Foreign reactions and the beginning of war. When Louis XVI accepted the final constitution in 1791, Robespierre declared the end of the revolution, not knowing a radical era lay ahead. France was excited about revolution, and Great Britain was hopeful that their political system would be reconstructed similar to France's. Edmund Burke, a conservative leader, published Reflections on the Revolution in France in 1790 to defend European conservatism. He predicted reform would lead to tyranny and chaos. Mary Wollstonecraft wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Man, encouraging her then to write A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, advocating coeducation and starting the modern women's movement for equal rights. In 1791, the Declaration of Pillnitz declared Austria and Prussia's willingness to invade France. Without starting war, this was thought to have a sobering effect on France. The National Assembly disbanded, seeking popular support by declaring that none of its members be eligible for election to the new Legislative Assembly. Many legislators were younger middle-class men called Jacobins, committed to liberal revolution. France declared war on the Habsburg monarch Francis II. This was ineffective because when Prussia joined Austria in the Austrian Netherlands, French forces fled. Only conflict between the Eastern monarchs over the division of Poland saved France from defeat. Austro-Prussian threats caused the Legislative Assembly to declare the country in danger. News of treason by the King and Queen spread on August 10, 1792, and a revolutionary crowd attacked the royal palace. The royal family fled to the Legislative Assembly where the king was imprisoned. This led to a new national convention that would be elected by universal male suffrage. Total War and the Terror. In 1794, the French ruled the Austrian Netherlands in the Rhineland, and the First Coalition was falling apart due to the government's economy, revolutionary terror, and modern nationalism in a total war effort. Robespierre and the Committee of Public Safety advanced between 1793 and 1794 by collaborating with sans-culottes, encouraging fair prices, a moral economic order, and a planned economy. Rationing was introduced, quality was controlled, war arms and munition production were controlled, all with a socialist ideology. During Robespierre's reign of terror from 1793 to 1794, 40,000 French died, and 300,000 people were imprisoned who were suspect to opposing the government. After the French Republic's victory over the First Coalition, France continued to encourage nationalism. All unmarried young men could be drafted into the French armed forces, growing to 1 million men in various armies. By the spring of 1794, French armies were victorious on all fronts.
The Thermidor Reaction and the Directory. In 1794, Robespierre was guillotined to death. France experienced a reaction to the despotism of the reign, being the Thermidorian reaction. Many economic controls were abolished, more paper currency was printed, and prices rose. The sans-culottes wanted small businesses, decent wages, and economic justice, and revolted in Paris against the new order in 1795. National Convention wrote a constitution in which would guarantee their economic position. The Directory supported French military expansion, used the army to nullify the elections, and began to govern dictatorially. Napoleon Bonaparte ended the Directory in a coup d'etat and enforced a strong dictatorship.
Napoleon's rule of France. In 1799, General Napoleon Bonaparte had seized power when soldiers disbanded the Assembly. In command of French forces in Italy, he won victories in 1796 and 1797. Abbé Sieyès wrote that the nobility was overprivileged and that entire population should rule the French nation, favoring a strong military ruler like Napoleon. Napoleon made agreements with powerful French groups who received favors in return for loyal service. He promised absolute security of wealth and private property. He gave peasants land and status. He set up the Bank of France, he strengthened the French bureaucracy, and he perfected a centralized state. He also created a united Catholic Church. He allowed freedom of speech and press. He made all male citizens equal before the law. He introduced family monarchy where the power of the husband and the father were absolute. However, he did deny women of contracts and bank accounts. In 1800, the French clergy was divided into those who took an oath of allegiance to the revolutionary government and those in exile who had refused. Napoleon provided the majority of French people with order, stability, and military victory through his new economic order.
Napoleon's wars and foreign policy. In 1799, Napoleon sent peace feelers from the Second Coalition to Austria and Great Britain. After being rejected, Napoleon defeated the Austrians in the Treaty of Luneville. Austria lost almost all of its Italian possessions and German territory on the west bank of the Rhine. In the Treaty of Amiens with Great Britain, France remained in control of Holland, the Austrian Netherlands, the west bank of the Rhine, and most of the Italian peninsula. Napoleon tried to restrict British trade with all of Europe, but Great Britain remained dominant on the seas. Austria, Russia, and Sweden joined Britain to form the Third Coalition against France. Napoleon won over the Austrians and Russians at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805 and lost territory for peace. When Prussians mobilized, Napoleon attacked, and after Prussia, joining with Russia, lost to Napoleon, Alexander I of Russia wanted peace. In 1807, the treaties of Tilsit took half of Prussia's population, while Russia accepted Napoleon's reorganization of Europe. Enforcing the economic blockade, Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812, where Russia destroyed Napoleon's army. In 1814, Napoleon abdicated his throne and granted him the island of Elba off the coast of Italy as his own state. Louis XVII lacked the glory of Napoleon, so when Napoleon heard about France, he escaped from Elba in 1815. French officers and soldiers supported him, but the Allies were united against him. Napoleon was imprisoned on the island of St. Helena, and Louis XVII returned.